Hello and welcome to episode 199, all about masculinity in Lord of the Rings, aka the Faramir TED Talk, being the 199th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. I've been experiencing the world of Tolkien for the first time, and right now I'm doing whatever I want to, including spending over an hour and a half talking about Faramir. And also his terrible father and okayish brother. This was supposed to be the second half of one episode, and it turned into its own episode in and of itself, because both Emily and I, surprise, Emily is joining us once again, have very passionate feelings and thoughts about Faramir. And we want you to hear them all. So that's what this is. Enjoy! All right, and now we are joined once again by Silmaremily. What? Wasn't she just on here for Lego Lord of the Rings? Yes. Do I care? No.
I don't care. I'm
back.
So excited. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So the reason I'm bringing you back on so soon is because you and I are on the same wavelength for a lot of things regarding our precious cinnamon roll boy Faramir.
Best.
And I was like, I cannot imagine having this conversation with anyone else. We'll get the elephant what is it? Elephant in the room. That's it. Elephant in the room out of the way. Two women talking about masculinity. Yes.
Absolutely.
Did I bring on someone who's probably going to agree with the majority of what I'm saying? Yes. Do I care about either of those things? No. It's my podcast. I can do what I want.
Can I just say, though, what an honor it is to be recognized as somebody who loves Faramir. Like, if that's the only thing I'm ever known for in my entire life, I am satisfied.
I just remember, around the time that I was reaching out to you about the Silmarillion, you had just posted stuff about Faramir, and I was like, this girl gets it. Every
once in a while I sprinkle it in because I feel like people kind of forget about him, and you see a lot of hype for a lot of other characters, and so every once in a while I'm like, oh, I just need to talk about how much I love Faramir. The world needs to be reminded.
I agree wholeheartedly. So this conversation of two women talking about men will not even be a drop in the bucket for all the conversations that men have had about women. So before you go to leave that comment somewhere, just consider that. This has been kind of a long time coming because I've threatened to give a TED Talk about Faramir.
I have too.
for multiple years. The first half of this episode, which was a lovely conversation, very fun, that I had with Don. We talked about Aragorn. We talked about Sam, our sweet boys. It was very loosey-goosey. I kind of just wrote down a few loose points. This one, I wrote down 3 pages of notes. I have quotations pulled in here. And I don't want people to think that, she just didn't care about the first half or she was late. I also was lazy, but I think it just goes to show how deeply invested I am in what we're going to discuss. And This is, again, like I said, it's going to be more quote unquote structured just because I kind of have this thesis statement, if you will, that if I was writing, this would be a really cool topic to write about if I was still in college and I was still smart,
I wish I had found a way to incorporate Tolkien and Lord of the Rings more in my college essays. I think I could have done it. If I had thought to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I would have branched out into taking different kinds of classes too if I had been introduced to Lord of the Rings earlier than this. But then again, I wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be having this conversation,
right?
If I had been introduced to Lord of the Rings.
All works out the way it's supposed to.
Yes, exactly. So this general theme of the TED Talk is that when you examine the 3 men, the they don't have last names, so I can't be the blank family,
yeah.
The theme of this TED Talk is that the steward of Gondor family, Denethor and his two sons Boromir and Faramir. Within them, we see a range of representations of masculinity and how that is portrayed in these three characters. And in this essay, I will argue that toxic masculinity is punished and positive masculinity is rewarded. As evidenced by the fact that Denethor and Boromir are dead at the end of the events of Return of the King, and Faramir is not.
Which I feel like there's like a disclaimer that I always give when I talk about toxic masculinity, which is the fact that everybody loses. Like, it's not like women complain about masculinity kind of thing. It's like the stuff that, when we say toxic masculinity, the stuff that is surrounded by and supported by that is stuff that harms men just as much.
It's harmful for everyone, and that's why it's important to discuss and recognize that when you hold I think, like, as we see happens with Denethor's story and Boromir's story, that when you hold yourself to these very tight constraints of who you are supposed to be and how you are supposed to act, and the like expectations of the world on those things, it's extremely limiting and painful. And I think that, like, what's his name? Tolkien, the author. I think that Tolkien was he was very aware that there are more positive ways. There's more to being a man than just being a strong soldier and king. And, like, you know, kudos to him for going into these topics.
Weirdly ahead of his time for that. That is
in a time where, like,
don't see
the
often.
idea of the traditional man was so superfluous, I guess. Is that the word I was looking for? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's like a surprising outlook to come out of that era in the world. Like, you always see, like, toxic men nowadays being like, oh, we should revert back to traditional, you know, values. And, like, Tolkien back then in those traditional values was writing stuff like this, which I think is, like I said, weirdly, unintentionally ahead of his time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is I think it was I think a lot of what he did was very unintentional.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't sit down and be like, I'm gonna write this really feminist like progressive
manifesto
story. Yeah, like he did not sit, that was not his intention, but it's kind of funny how it's, I think you mentioned that in your episode about all of the, like, women of Tolkien, where it's like he didn't intentionally write strong, good women. It just so happened that in his writing, it ended up being that way. Like, yeah. Just because of him and his experiences. It wasn't like this thing he set out to do, I guess.
Yeah. I want to add a huge disclaimer at the start of this conversation that I'm not setting out to say that, like, Boromir represents toxic masculinity and Faramir does represent positive masculinity. That part is true.
Right.
But I'm not here to, like, belittle Boromir and, like, boil him down to this, like, one bad moment that happens.
No, we all know Boromir is also an underrated, very complex, misunderstood, oftentimes, character.
Yes. And I think, I'll get more into Boromir, because I think I've had like an emotional journey with Boromir over the course of this podcast.
I feel like we all have. Like, I feel like everybody goes through an emotional, conflicting journey with Boromir.
Yeah. Another, I guess, disclaimer that, like, I kind of just disagree with, but I'm adding it because, I don't know, maybe you have extra thoughts on it. I'm seeing more and more often that people complain that the movies, like, grossly misrepresented Denethor.
I knew you were going to say that.
And, like, they got everything wrong. He was just a man trying his best. And I'm interested to hear, like, why people think that, because the way I see it, and especially after reading the appendices and learning more about Denethor and, like, who he was in his younger years, before his wife died, after his wife died, I'm like, he seems to me like a very proud, somewhat conceited man who had multiple points in his life where he could have made better choices and didn't, and kind of retreated within himself instead. And so the movies exaggerated a lot of like his negative qualities because it's a movie. They have to make those kinds of choices. But I don't think that it was a wild, gross misrepresentation of what he was like in the books.
I think the thing that I hear people talk about most is the fact that he had one of the Palantir and he was fighting this battle, and the Palantir was, slowly corrupting him. So I think a lot of people point to the fact that the movies kind of make it seem like Denethor was ignoring this problem the whole time, and that he was just being like a nasty man just for the heck of it. And so people, I think, point to the Palantir kind of corrupting him, and also like the fact that he does have the Palantir and is like kind of being instructed, or I don't know, like he is kind of being influenced by it for so long, pointing to the fact that makes him very strong and kind of, I don't know. That's the argument that I've heard, that people kind of say it as a reason why the movies did Denethor dirty and he's not as bad in the book, which, I mean, I do see, but...
That's nice, because I'm like, I just think that's, like... Anyway, oh my god.
I do see what they're saying. I do, like, understand that, like, okay, yes, he probably was a better, at least military commander. Like he didn't just completely disregard the Sauron problem. Like he was doing something about it. And he was supposedly kind of like a brilliant strategist. Is that how you say it? Strategist. So those are the points that I have seen laid out before, and I'm like, yeah, I do get it. But also the whole conversation about him wishing it was Faramir instead of
there's
Boromir, that still happens, like, bro. Like he still says that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I get the defense, but I'm like, why are you defending Denethor?
Yeah,
like, I understand.
We don't need to defend
know,
Denethor. We don't need to defend him. Let's start with Denethor, the patriarch, and the current leader of Gondor when we are in the story of Lord of the Rings. So we learn in the appendices that Aragorn was in Gondor for a while during his ranger days as Thorongil. In this time, he was nothing but a bro. He was going around doing really cool stuff for Gondor and Rohan. It seemed that he was on good terms with Denethor's father, the steward at the time. And it mentions that when he decides to leave, that everyone was upset at his departure except for Denethor.
So we've got these early signs.
Yes. And it's kind of like, I think it's so interesting the way that it talks about this, because it just says, like, it is thought, it is discussed later on, like, in hindsight, we think this, so we don't exactly know what the nature of, like, Denethor's relationship was with Thorongil and, like, his impressions of him and vice versa, but it's basically inferred that Denethor thought that his father favored Thorongil and kind of started to see him as a rival, and that he left Gondor because he was like, I'm not going to stick around, like, Denethor does not like me. I'm not going to wait here and stick around until he's steward.
Right.
Like, I'm going to leave while I'm still on good terms with the current steward. Yeah, and Denethor basically sees, it's implied that Denethor views Thorongil as a threat. And especially later on when he learns that this is actually Aragorn, the, supposed true king of Gondor, he absolutely sees that as a threat to him, a threat to his rule over Gondor and Minas Tirith. And it's never necessarily said outright that like Denethor believes that he should be the real ruler, or that like he wants to be ruling over Gondor and, you know, and that he wants to be the king or anything. But a lot of this, like contextually, when you put it all together, it very much reads that Denethor has this desire for power, and he has it. And when someone shows up to potentially contest it, he kind of spirals. Also super interesting in the first description that it gives us of Denethor. So it says he's a proud man, tall, valiant, more kingly than any man that had appeared in Gondor. I think that's so interesting that he's the steward and it says kingly. Like he has an air about him that he wants to be king.
Yes. And he does have at least he kind of does have like the bloodline claim, as he comes from this long line of stewards. So he is kind of technically, at least, I feel like one of like these families in Gondor that can trace lineage back to, you know, these great men of Numenor. I feel like that probably has kind of been bred out everywhere else. So I feel like even though he's not the king, he does kind of still have this, you know, long line of stewards, Numenorian kind of men of westerness vibe about him, even if he isn't the king. It's kind of all these people know. It's like they've had stewards forever, and they're kind of the last, like, oh, we can kind of trace our lines back, regal people.
Yeah. Also important to note, I think, Throngil advises Ecthelion to not trust Saruman and instead to trust Gandalf.
Interesting.
And Denethor, it doesn't exactly say why Denethor doesn't, like, never liked Gandalf. I believe the exact words is there was little love between Denethor and Gandalf. I'm sure that like at that point that was just like one more notch against Throngil for Denethor, that he was like, oh, he's telling us to trust Gandalf. Well, now I really hate him. So when he becomes steward, and it sounds like he was a pretty like decent nice husband, nice father, nice leader in the beginning. He has a lot of traits that I don't necessarily, and I think this is also just like general blanket statement. A lot of these traits that we're going to discuss between these three characters, I don't think are necessarily, they're not inherently bad things. It's just things that like when you have like your whole identity surrounding this one thing or fixating on being this one thing, it's a very slippery slope to dangerous thoughts and dangerous actions. For example, this is one of the lines that like I like, I don't know, guffawed or like scoffed or whatever when I read it. It says he listened to counsel and then followed his own mind.
Which literally just sums up Denethor and Boromir to an extent.
Yeah.
In a line. Like that's the prime kind of thing that sets them apart from Faramir, is that they are set in their ways and not willing to change, and Faramir is.
Yeah. Again, this, especially like I would say for a leader, this isn't necessarily a bad quality. It means that they're very sure of themselves. They're confident in their choices. And those are admirable things to have in a leader. Because look at the kind of the opposite, where you have Theoden and Grima Wormtongue whispering in his ear. Obviously, you know, Saruman comes into play with that. But like Denethor is not very easily swayed by others. And so he'll stick to his guns. And in some ways, that's an admirable trait, that he's not going to, if he thinks something is the right thing to do, he's not going to let others distract him. But the converse of that is that he ignores the advice of others, even when it has like dire consequences.
Yes.
So again, yeah, it sounds like he was doing pretty great for himself in his early life, but that the grief of losing his wife really sent him on a
downward spiral.
Yeah. And I think this is a trait that we can talk about in like this lens of toxic masculinity, where he is grieving, he's heartbroken, and because this like these constructs of masculinity say that like men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't talk about their feelings, men should be able to gain control over their emotions.
Right.
He does not reach out to others for help. And I say help in the sense of like help running Gondor or help just for himself.
Yeah, just like friendly kind of assistance, like when you're grieving someone.
And so instead he just kind of retreats within himself. It says that he becomes very like more grim and silent in these days after the death of his wife. And so this is when, instead of seeking out other people to help him, he turns to the Palantir. And so this is just like the kind of, I don't know, really the tipping point. And then like using the Palantir, it just becomes a vicious cycle that like he's going to become more grim, more he's already very mistrustful of other people, of Gandalf. He doesn't listen to other people's advice and counsel, and so now he's, you know, using the Palantir, and that's kind of feeding off of this energy and these traits and these thoughts within him, and then just like amplifying it. And he is so, and this is another thing that we see in Boromir too, that he is so prideful, and he is an intelligent person, but he is so prideful and believes in himself so much that he is arrogant enough to believe, oh, well, I'm the exception when it comes to using the Palantir. I'll be able to overcome it. And this exact same thing happens with Boromir, where he's like, well, I can overcome it.
Yep. Exact same thing with the ring, where he's like, I'm good enough. I can, you know, I can use this and I won't be corrupted. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously all of these things, when left to fester over years and years, reaches a pinnacle. And then he once again is faced with this insurmountable grief when Boromir dies. He's still too proud to listen to Gandalf. He does not trust that Rohan is going to come to their aid. He does not all he hears when Gandalf and Pippin show up and Gandalf is like, don't say a word. And then Pippin is like, anyway, so Aragorn. All he hears when he hears that like Aragorn is involved with them somehow, all he believes is that Aragorn is just going to kick down the door and steal the throne.
Yep. And he's going to lose his power because that's all that he's cared about.
Yeah. I think at that point he has lost so much, and he's lost his wife, he's lost his son, and I think he's also lost so much of himself that like the original Denethor does not, there's like there's little left of him. Yeah, that being steward is probably like the last thing that he has.
Oh, yeah, it is, because he obviously doesn't care about Faramir. So I mean, what else does he have to live for?
Yeah. So all of that kind of, you know, reaches this tipping point that he would rather trust in the Palantir and what the Palantir is telling him to do, and take his own life and his remaining sons on his own terms than believe Gandalf, than believe that aid is going to come, then believe the people who are telling him, don't listen to the Palantir, it's deceiving you. He does not believe that he can be deceived, and that leads to his demise.
Literally.
And it's only because Faramir is so beloved by other people that they fight to save him. And it makes me wonder that like would like Pippin and Gandalf and like and Baragond and the other guards would, if it was Boromir in there, would they also be fighting tooth and nail, or would there like, was there just something a little extra about Faramir that makes them be like, we have to save him? Like maybe if they didn't like him as much, would they have not fought against these orders so hard, you know, like what would have happened then?
Yes. And see, I love that because I feel like it challenges this idea that like in order to be like a beloved, you know, like a man that other men respect and that women want and all that stuff, you have to be this like perfect masculine man who never fails. When in reality, it's because of Faramir's failures to uphold those standards set forth by his father that makes him a person that people like and a person that people want to save and to have around.
Oh, so good. So good. That's so great. Yeah, totally. Because I think there's, especially like historically speaking, there's like this idea that to be an effective leader, you have to like instill fear in the hearts of the people that you rule over. You have to like be strict and domineering and stuff in order to earn their respect. And Faramir's
it's all
like,
about like
nah,
shows of
man.
power in to gain you know, respect and admiration and adoration.
So now shifting to Boromir, I said I've been with a journey with this man because originally, and I there are still a lot of these thoughts when it comes to me and Boromir. So like, don't get me wrong. But originally I was just very annoyed with him. I found him insufferable. Watching the movies didn't really change much of that for me because I think the movies played up a lot of these qualities in Boromir. Like they were really sowing those seeds, especially if you watch the extended edition. There are so many scenes where it's like foreshadowing what Boromir is going to do.
Oh yeah. I feel like they really wanted you to have that change of heart. Like they wanted to really kind of build up his more negative characteristics that make you kind of distrust him. That way his sacrifice means
has
more
of an
and
impact,
I feel like it makes you more of like a, oh wait a second, no wait, why am I sad, you know, like why have all of a sudden do I feel differently about him? And it's not until like literally his, you know, dying breath that he gets this like redemption.
Yeah, it wasn't really, I would say like through the course of kind of like after a couple years now, the story has kind of like settled more into my brain and I've talked to more people. And I would say especially after reading the appendices and learning of Boromir's relationship with Faramir, it's really changed a lot for me. And you really learn...
Because they were good friends. They were good brothers to each other.
You really learn that he was at his heart a good man who... In my impression is that he's constantly torn between doing what I think he knows is the right choice and like the better decision and doing what he knows his father wants him to do. And being like, in this case, the right choice is to do X, but I don't think that's what my father would want me to do. And being constantly in conflict with that, I would imagine throughout like growing up and growing into this, you know, captain of Gondor. So, and it's, so it's when he is doing the things that he thinks Denethor would want him to do is when I'm like, you're being insufferable. You're being so dumb. You need to listen to other people. And again, he the apple like doesn't fall far from the tree, and so we see these traits passed on from Denethor to Boromir, where Boromir is equally as prideful, equally as stubborn, doesn't like to listen to others, and also it's kind of implied that it says like he was much like his father except in his mind, so it's also kind of implied that Boromir is a little bit dumb. Like he's not nearly as intelligent as Denethor and Faramir. I
feel like he lacks self-awareness. That's what that seems to me to say. Is that like he doesn't think he's like his father. He is, but he is not aware of the similarities. So,
and you know, and
maybe
I think
not dumb, but just a little unaware of his
it's that he doesn't
self.
So it says he was fearless and strong, but caring little for love, save the tales of old battles. So he places his value in fights and in like history and battles and stuff, and he just doesn't find the same value that like Faramir does in like literature or history or anything.
And that is such a good analog to the, like, you know, I feel like the all famous Faramir quote, I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend, which is such like again, him, like Tolkien pitting them, I mean, not pitting them against each other, but kind of putting them on these opposite sides of the spectrum.
Characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, it's such a good analog to the way that Faramir obviously feels about that kind of stuff.
And so again, these qualities, being fearless and strong, he doesn't care about having a love life. These aren't necessarily bad things. But when you put all of your eggs into this being fearless and strong basket, that's when it becomes an issue, and that's like what the ring kind of plays in on.
Yes.
Yeah. What I love and what I respect just like to my core is that there was a huge opportunity for there to be this rivalry between Faramir and Boromir. Boromir easily, he's the older brother. Like even take out all of the other dynamics, like just being an older sibling is enough to instill like a sense of rivalry and being
he
better.
obviously could have been just like Denethor and belittled Faramir and been against him too. Yeah. But
like he knew he was the favorite. He is, you know, he is more this ideal image of like the strong, fearless, you know, Gondor soldier. And it says there was a great love between the brothers and had been since childhood, when Boromir was the helper and protector of Faramir.
Yes. I love that he throws that in as in protector, which it makes me think that not only does Boromir notice the way that his father treats Faramir, but it almost seems like he kind of puts himself between them and kind of tries his best to shield Faramir from, you know, things his father does and says. And I feel like you see that in the extended edition. I think it's in Return of the King, where they have that flashback right before Boromir leaves to go to the Council of Elrond, where they're like, oh, you know, he's coming. And you can tell that Boromir has this sense of Faramir's kind of sadness and discomfort over the way that his father treats him. Yeah. I mean,
because it easily could be that he's like, "All right, Dad's here. He's gonna come and praise me for being so awesome." But he doesn't
feel that way about it. It's almost like he kind of resents the favoritism. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's at least the way I like to think it comes across.
I think he dislikes, obviously, that his father is so cruel to Faramir, but I think he subconsciously is always going to be taking in that praise
because
from
of
his father.
His love of being a soldier and being a leader.
Yeah.
His knowledge of his role as the future steward of Gondor. Like, it's like, you know, his duty will always
be
first,
to like protect Gondor and lead Gondor. Yeah. So helper and protector, these I would also say are like traditionally masculine roles.
Oh, definitely.
That again are not necessarily bad, but something that when they are exaggerated and preyed upon, and like when the darkness of the ring and the power of the ring touches those aspects, and it says to Boromir, it turns these aspects within him and says, like, you can save Gondor. You can save the world. Like, you've already done so much and saved so many people. You can do that. You just need a little help.
And that's all that he's been taught to care about.
Yes.
That's all he's been taught that matters.
Yeah. And conversely, when Faramir tries to venture into things other than that, he's like chastised and looked down upon for that. And so I can definitely see where Boromir is like, this is what we're supposed to like and do and how we're supposed to act. so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not necessarily going to question it.
Right.
Because he falls into those roles so naturally.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing. It's really sweet, I think, that so it talks about how both Boromir and Faramir are kind of like equally loved by the people of Gondor, but it's kind of phrased in a way that it's like Boromir looked at Faramir and saw him as the more popular one and saw him as like the more beloved, and vice versa, that like Faramir looks at Boromir and thinks he's the most loved in Gondor. And I think that like that's so sweet that they're willing to see like the best of each other.
Yeah, I feel like he's the only one, at least in his family, that for Faramir, that sees him that way. Obviously Denethor does not.
It hurts my heart.
Where it's like you're sad, like for Boromir's death, I'm never sad for Denethor. I'm always sad for Faramir.
Yeah. It's so hard because his like one champion in the world for himself,
literally,
his one helper and protector in this world is gone. I think it's interesting that so both flashing forward to like the events of, you know, the ring happening. Faramir has this dream pretty vividly, pretty regularly, and Boromir has it one time, and it's this one time that pushes Denethor to be like, yeah, let's go investigate this. But also it might be kind of a dig on Boromir's maybe like not intelligence, but just like it says that Faramir has this farsighted ability that Denethor has, but it kind of like skipped Boromir. So I can also see it being like, man, if even Boromir's having this dream, that probably means we should investigate it.
There's a good quote from, I think it's letter 281, where he says Tolkien says of Denethor, whatever be his ancestry, by some chance the blood of the men of Westernesse runs true in him, as it does in his other son Faramir, and yet not in Boromir, whom he loved most. They have a long sight. So he talks about Faramir's this like second sight that he has that, again, Tolkien uses to set Faramir apart from these men of Gondor and kind of group him in more with Aragorn and the men of the West. But I do think it is funny that he says, even though Boromir does not have the sight, he still loves Boromir more. And it's just kind of proves that like Faramir's ability to see further into situations and like make better, wiser decisions is due to this, you know, correlation he has with the men of Numenor, which because Boromir lacks, he obviously makes his mind up, you know, more rashly and is less likely to listen to outside opinion. Like he's set in his ways because he doesn't have this gift of seeing other points of view, I guess.
There's a difference here from the book and the movie, where in the movie Boromir is like, I don't think we should go to Rivendell, and Faramir's like, I'll go, and then Denethor, you know, like really puts him down, and it's like, I don't trust you to go, it has to be Boromir,
right?
But in the book, Faramir, I think it's actually really cute that Faramir, I can just imagine him being he's like, oh, we have to go to Rivendell? Awesome, I'm there. And doesn't necessarily, he's so enamored with this idea of like conversing with the elves and like finding the answer that he doesn't necessarily think about like the path to get there. And Boromir probably doesn't care much about like what is the answer to this riddle. He steps in and says, it's going to be very dangerous, and him being the protector of Faramir, he insists that he should go so that Faramir is not put in danger. Right. And so that's why Boromir ends up at the Council of Elrond rather than Faramir, which again leads to like such a cool like alternative universe idea of like, what would happen if Faramir
had gone instead.
Like would he have resisted the ring at that moment in time? Did he need, like, was Boromir's death something that he needed to know about in order to resist the, you know, like there's just like so many like kind of like domino effect things of like, would the same things have happened if Faramir had gone? would it have been just like
how would it have been different had
Yes.
Boromir not been like, no, I'm the older brother, this is my job to go. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Also, so this is when, everything we just talked about is like backstory to Boromir. It's appendices stuff. It's stuff that you learn later, because when you first meet him in the Council of Elrond, and the first impression you kind of get from him is that he's very brash. He just kind of like speaks up and says his piece. When Aragorn presents the sword, Boromir says like, and who are you? And why have you not been in Gondor? Like, I haven't seen you in Minas Tirith. And you kind of get, you get this impression that he like judges Aragorn for not being in Gondor to lead and protect their people, when Boromir has been doing that. And for someone who has a very narrow view of how men in this world should act, he's seeing Aragorn not acting in that way and in that capacity.
Oh yeah, he totally starts out with like zero respect for the guy. And then obviously you see he does grow to respect him and see him as the true king.
Yes.
But that takes, he has to spend time with
journey.
him. It's not like it's not like a thing that he automatically had for him because, like you said, of these like kind of rigid ideas he has about leadership.
Yes. So finally, over the course of, I forget how long it is that they're like from Rivendell to the time that the Fellowship breaks up, but it's only like a few weeks or a few months. But over the course of these weeks, he's in proximity to the ring. And the ring, I can imagine Sauron, however the like temptation works.
Yeah, but like if the ring was gonna pick anybody in the group, it's gonna pick
Boromir
because he's the weak link.
I think he's the most vulnerable. I think he's the most susceptible because of these traits that he has that have been passed down to him from Denethor, that have been instilled in him by society, that have been encouraged throughout, his childhood and growing up into a man, that being brave, being fearless, being a protector and a soldier and a leader. These are things that when Sauron taps into that and manipulates those feelings, it leads Boromir down a very bad path.
Yes. Oh, it's like just like the ring race. I mean, and it's something that like, even characters like Galadriel and Gandalf acknowledge that like Boromir wanted to do, they would also take the ring and have intentions to use it for good. But because it's the ring, it's just not possible.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. And that's the huge difference of what happens. Yeah. Boromir believes he's going to be the exception, that he is going to, he's like, well, the ring isn't going to influence me badly because I'm going to use it for good. Like, I don't want to necessarily rule. Like, yes, I do imagine myself as, storming into Gondor and saving the day and being this hero, but I don't want to rule with an iron fist over my people. I just want to save them. And people like Galadriel and people like Gandalf have the wisdom to listen to other people. And when other people say, I know you want to use the ring for good, but it's not possible, they believe them. But Boromir, I think, even like he's hearing what Elrond's saying, but he is like, but maybe it won't be like that for me. And so that leads to him attacking and scaring off Frodo, which ultimately leads to the breaking of the Fellowship. He's ultimately, like, yes, he saves their lives, but he's ultimately unable to protect Merry and Pippin from being captured. Like, they're still taken away. Of course, then he dies. Rip. Rest in peace. And now going to our wonderful sweet angel Faramir an hour later.
You're not wrong. I know you're like, we're gonna talk for like 30 minutes. No.
Faramir. So we've just talked about all these things about Denethor, about Boromir, and I feel like as you move from Denethor to Boromir, like these things kind of weaken, you know, and like Boromir is more able to be himself and not let these like negative qualities, you know, drag him down, or not like fixate on these things too much. And so it kind of like it lessens with each, you know, generation a bit. And so when it gets to Faramir, he is able to break this like these like generational expectations that have been passed down through the line of stewards and passed down from Denethor to Boromir. But he breaks this cycle and recognizes when he is presented with the ring, he recognizes this is not my place in the world to come in and be the protector and be the hero of Gondor. That is for someone else. Because he does not have this desire for power within him.
Which is just, I think, points to it being such a nature thing. Because I feel like a lot of times when you're talking about characters and their goodness or badness or whatever, there's a lot of like nature and nurture aspects to it. And for me, why Faramir is, in my opinion, a gooder character than someone like Aragorn or Sam is because he has everything stacked against him. They don't have... Sam is a hobbit. He has nothing preventing him from being a good person. Aragorn has like been raised his whole life with the knowledge that he's the king and he's from this line and he's going to save
has
the
like
world,
a support system.
He has a support system. He has literally, he's raised by Elrond essentially. Like he has everything
he has people
working
to go
in
to
his
for
favor.
guidance.
Yes. And Faramir literally has nothing and no one, and he manages to do something that nobody else does. And I also think going back to his like second sight, he also is just himself interested in the past and in the history of Gondor and like Numenor, and that's something that you get the sense of when he's talking to Frodo and when he does officially reject the ring, is like, you know that he knows all of this history. And that's something that Boromir didn't or wouldn't have thought to consider, because he mentions like the Isildur's Bane. He mentions like, you know, everything that happened with Isildur and all of these legends that he's grown up hearing. And that is one of the reasons why he has the wisdom to reject the ring, is because he knows he's not laboring under this false impression that Boromir is, that by just like brute force or strength that he's gonna overpower this, you know, this ring, this supremely evil object. He's like, no, I've read the history books. I know what happens when you touch this thing, and I'm not going anywhere near it.
Yeah. So I get this impression. So we've said a lot about how Denethor and Boromir are similar, but I get this impression that Faramir and Denethor are also very similar, but that Faramir, kind of what you were saying earlier, that like Boromir is not, he lacks a lot of self-awareness, and so he's not going to question these qualities that he has, and he's going to look at Denethor and be like, no, I'm not my father. But I think Faramir recognizes a lot of instances in which he is his father, and they share a lot of similar traits. For example, this like second sight, and it says Faramir read the hearts of men as shrewdly as his father, but what he read moved him sooner to pity than to scorn. So he is using these traits to like see the good in other people and to empathize with them, rather than to find ways, like find reasons to not trust them, or like find reasons to like turn against them or think badly of them.
Well, he even acknowledges to Frodo, and he says like, I can well believe that Boromir, the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith, might desire such a thing and be allured by it. Alas, that he ever went on that errand. So like, he acknowledges that if this is like Boromir's downfall, he didn't do it for the wrong reasons. Like he's aware of these traits of his brother that may have caused him to be tempted, and he also acknowledges that he's not doing it for any reason other than to save the city. And that would have been his goal. His goal wouldn't have been to like, you know, go crazy and take over the world.
But that's always how it starts, isn't it?
Right.
Like we mentioned, Denethor disliked Gandalf, and the fact that Faramir is so interested in like scholarly pursuits. He seeks out Gandalf a lot in his childhood. That's got to be when like Denethor's resentment for him started.
Right.
And then I'm sure that like since Denethor is kind of under the influence of the Palantir, that like it just only grew and worsened from there, you know. He is gentle in bearing, a lover of lore and music, and this is perhaps why people perceived that he wasn't as strong and as brave as Boromir, but he was equally as, you know, strong and noble and everything, but he did not seek glory and danger without a purpose. And so the way I interpret this is that Boromir is, you call Boromir and you're crying, and he's like, all right, who are we beating up? You know, and he just immediately goes and beats up like the first person he can find. You call it Faramir, you're crying. Faramir's also gonna go beat up someone, but he's gonna ask what happened first. Faramir's gonna be like, let's get to the issue, what happened? And you see this when he this is where I'm going to move to talking specifically about the book and not the movie, which is a different choice that I don't think I'll ever get over, which is fine. Sometimes the things you love just don't see, you know, the beautiful end that you were expecting.
See, we have this is where we differ in opinions, because I don't mind movie Faramir. I mean, I acknowledge that.
Here's the thing, is that like I'm gonna love him in any iteration. I'm gonna love him in every iteration that he is adapted into.
Yes.
But I know, but like looking at the book and like knowing what it is originally, and that it's I just think it's so much better.
Oh, it is.
So anyway, so he encounters Sam and Frodo, and at first he's very like stern with them. He's a little bit scary. They're like not sure what to make of him. He's kind of like interrogating them really intensely, and it's not because he kind of has a reason to not trust people that he runs into in this area of the land, because they're so close to Mordor, you know. That like it's his duty, it is his job as the captain of these rangers and these, you know, soldiers or whatever. It's his job to be that thorough, that I guess that's it. It's his job to be that thorough in trying to find out who these people are, what are they doing, what are their intentions, because if it is bad people, that has consequences for him and the people that he, you know, leads. But once he finds out the truth and learns like who they are, where they've been, and they say, here's this evil ring, it has to be destroyed, do not be tempted to use it for good, because your brother tried to do that very same thing and he died because of it. And exactly like you just read, that Faramir almost immediately is like, I 100% like, I believe you that he was tempted by the ring, because I love my brother, but also he kind of lacks impulse control.
Yes.
So I believe that. And we also know that he holds his brother in such high regard, and Boromir is held in such high regard in Gondor, that he has to be learning this. They already know that Boromir has died when they meet Frodo and Sam, because he showed up in a boat.
Right.
So they already know he's died. They didn't know how, but now that they're learning what led to it, he's like, if like this ring must truly be terrible if it turned my brother into this kind of that like
it confirms all of these things he's read, like he's all of these stories that he's grown up hearing about Isildur. He's like, okay, this confirms
he's like,
what
yeah,
I thought.
it was, yeah, these weird histories mentioned something about like Isildur's bane, and then like Isildur disappeared, but like it's kind of iffy about what exactly happened. And
yes,
yeah,
and he's like, okay,
that.
putting the pieces together.
Yeah. And like the fact that, again, he has this image in his head of who Boromir is, and then he asks Frodo and Sam, like, was Boromir a friend to you? And Frodo is like, well, he's like, I guess. I mean, yeah, I think I'd consider him a friend, sure. Yeah, right? Maybe. And he's like, okay, what's up with that? Why are you know? And then, of course, this is when he says, I would not take this thing if it lay on the highway. Not if Minas Tirith were in ruin, and I alone could save her. And then this is also when he says that, like, he recognizes that he is not the one. He is not meant to be the one to unite Gondor and bring like the glory, like this former glory of Gondor is not his. It's Aragorn's.
Well, and that's something that I love so much about that quote is he says, like, I like using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory, nor do I wish for such triumphs.
Yeah.
So it's like
it literally says he does not, whatever the quote I said earlier about like he does not fight with the sword for glory, you know, like he just doesn't want any of that.
It's this twofold of like he knows the history, he has this second sight, this wisdom to not use it, but also he does not wish for the same things that Boromir did. He's not tempted by the prospect of potentially saving Minas Tirith and getting all of this glory. Like that's not something he cares for. And that's also something that I find so satisfying about his ending is that the one person who did not strive for power and did not strive for a position of authority like ends up in one because he was good and by no other, you know, he didn't have some glorious triumph in battle. He was just good, and that is how he becomes the Prince of Ithilien. And I don't know if that's jumping ahead, but that's something like that I love. It's so full circle about his story, and that it's kind of like, I mean,
it's the people who don't want power who should be in power. You
exactly.
Know?
Yes, that's
which is like
way to say it.
You know, which is the issue.
right, exactly.
of everything, which is that the people who should be in power will never run to be in positions of power.
Right, exactly.
So he says, I would see the white tree in flower again in the courts of the kings, and the silver crown return, and Minas Tirith in peace. War must be while we defend our lives against a destroyer who would devour all. But I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend, the city of the men of Númenor. And I would see the silver crown return. He is saying the exact opposite thing of what Denethor would say.
Oh, exactly. Because Denethor wanted to hold on to that power, and Faramir at any opportunity always gives deference to Aragorn, and that's why he is always lumped in with the men of Númenor, the men like Aragorn, and not with these kind of like lower men of Middle Earth that this great bloodline has been bred out of them. Like whether because those traits still run in his blood or whether or not just because of his personality, he kind of like deserves them.
That's just like such a key moment that I am just disappointed did not play out in the movies. We'll leave it with that.
I mean, you see him kind of being supportive at the coronation, but I think in the book he like leads it. Like he's the one who kind of crowns Aragorn.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking just like generally about like this scene with the ring. Oh, sorry, not that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like glossing over the heartbreaking parts of Return of the King where like he's confronting his father, like seeing him for the first time since Boromir's died. Denethor says, I wish it was you instead of Boromir. And he is so I think like he's so honorable that
Yes.
actually, and this is a
He
point.
just kind of takes that.
This is a point
Like, he's like...
that I did not even plan, but it has just occurred to me about how this idea that toxic masculinity is punished when Denethor orders him and the troop to go back to Osgiliath, and they know it's a suicide mission, and Faramir acts on his father's wishes, and the like noble thing to do, the honorable thing to do, is to listen to the steward, follow orders, go out and be a brave soldier and fight in this battle. Gandalf is trying to give him last bit of counsel and says, like, do not do this, like, your father loves you, but like this is not the way forward. And these are things, this is a time when Faramir's doing things on behalf of his father because he's trying to please his father, because his dad just told him, I wish you were dead. And he's like, well, I'll try to please you by dying.
Right.
And
right.
So he
literally
goes out to battle and everyone is killed except for him. And he is on his deathbed, and to the point that Denethor believes him dead. So that's just like the instance where he follows and falls into these constructs of traditional masculinity. That instance is then punished.
It's like instant karma.
Yes, exactly.
For the toxic masculinity.
Where
it's
Tolkien is saying, like, this is not the way
this
to
is
be.
what happens.
This is not the way to do things. Yeah.
Right.
And then when he... this moment. So he wakes up in the Houses of Healing later. Aragorn has just healed him. He has not met this guy. He has not ever met him. But he knows in his heart of hearts that it was the King of Gondor who just saved him from the brink of death. And the first thing he says is, I heard my lord call me, come and tell me, like, what do you command? And I'll do it immediately, which is like just something that, like, comparing it with Boromir's first interaction with Aragorn, where he was like, who do you think you are?
Threatened and defensive. And Faramir recognizes that he has healed him because the healing hands of the King of Gondor, that he has this ability. The fact that he immediately recognizes that, and like I said, the showing of deference, not because of Aragorn's, show of willpower or authority over him, but because Aragorn performed this service for him, this act of kindness. That is what causes, like, it literally makes me emotional. It's like the fact that there's such a positive showing of like respect between men that's not based off of something that has anything to do with showing of power over one another.
Yeah, it's not this like standoff that it would have been.
It wasn't like
Boromir
I respect you because I beat you in battle, or you beat me in battle. Like it's I respect you and show deference to you because I recognize that you are the true king, because you healed me and you saved me.
Like you were the one who is supposed to be here, who is supposed to be uniting these people, who is supposed to bring...
And I will do what,
and like, I am happy to be a piece in this. I do not want to be the leader.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But he's so much more like the willingness to follow Aragorn versus his father.
Yes.
Like, he only ever does what Denethor wants when that's literally his last resort. He's like, well, I mean, he wants me dead. Might as well. It's like sort of like he's hit this limit.
And then just real quickly talking about his relationship with Éowyn, it's granted there are still elements of the way that it was written in the book that I don't appreciate, where it's like, oh, what Éowyn really needed to heal her was a man.
Right.
Like, oh, it was love that, like, the moment where it's like, and then they kissed upon the parapet for everyone to see. And he said, lo, it is the Lady of Rohan. See how she is healed? And it's like, no, I think there's more to healing and grieving and depression than just falling in love with someone. But that's nice.
It's something that's so funny to me that I feel like in years past that it definitely comes across more of like a, oh, well, that's lame. Like, she only hangs up her sword and gives up on this quest because a man came around. But I feel like we're in this age, at least right now, like with all of these new Disney princess movies where like the Disney princesses can't have a relationship and still be strong. And there's this like really masculine focus on making strong women be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like media only is like,
this is what we talked about with Eowyn specifically, that like she is a character that you see as being strong and fighting, but she also is still able to maintain her femininity. And that's something that
I appreciate, because I feel like that's kind of been like washed out of a lot of strong female stories now, where it's like women are only seen as strong if they exhibit masculine characteristics, and it's like, well, no, like you can be in love and still be a strong person. And I think with Eowyn's story specifically, it's like she is consumed by the same type of like lust for glory that Boromir is, and it's not necessarily like he's stripped that from her. It's like she's realized that that's not actually a healthy path to be on, and she's realized that it's not the end all be all to just be a warrior and die in battle. That she does want more from life than that. So there's like two sides of it for me. Like, it is it's
a moment where she's realizing like, oh, there's actually a lot more to live for. Like like there, because again, what she said, now we're going back to like the conversation about Eowyn, which is fine, but like it goes back to her saying like, I fear a cage, and I fear being trapped into this one singular role of like of being set on this path of like, I'm supposed to marry, and then I'm supposed to have babies, and I'm supposed to be a mom, and I'm supposed to be a doting wife, and then like that's all I'm supposed to do. And she wants more than that, but she wants it to a point where she's willing to be reckless in pursuit of it.
Yes.
And so anyway, and so like so like this idea that like what she really needed to heal was a man all along. That's something that like that's an aspect of the story that I don't appreciate, but I appreciate that their little like romance story is told with such like gentleness, and that like it's not this like Faramir is not like this suave, romance hero. He's not, he's not trying to woo her, and he's not trying to like seduce her, and he's not trying to trick her or, putting on a show to impress her. Like what's nice and what's so, and I think Tolkien does this really well with all of his romance stories, where he sees this like level of like gentleness and connection between both, partners, that like the thing that has them end up together is that they spend days walking the gardens together and like talking and, supposed like healing together.
Their relationship is founded on friendship and this bond they have, this shared trauma almost, and like mutual understanding of each other's struggles. Yeah. And, I feel like their pasts lend them both really well to understanding one another and understanding each other's trauma. And I think
I've said that like they are the only two who deserve each other. Like if I was going to choose someone for Eowyn to end up with, it would be Faramir. And if I was going to choose anyone for Faramir, it would be Eowyn. And like they are exactly what they need in each other.
Yes. And that's something that like I feel like as a woman, I would love if I could say like one thing about toxic masculinity, or just the way masculinity is performed.
Oh, we've said an hour and a half's worth of things by now.
But like, if there was something I could say, it would be the fact that like what society tells you that women like in men is actually wrong, and that's just what men like in other men.
That is something
what
we would call
like
the male gaze.
Yes.
And it's not just about like how men view women, it's about how men view men. And this is evidenced by scrolling through dating apps when I see so many profiles. You would be so amazed how many guys exist out there, and their entire profiles, they don't have a single smile. It's just them like smoldering or being serious, or they're like flexing, or they're in the gym, or they're doing things that they think men should be. And it is not, I mean, like for some women, for some people, that's what they want. That's great. But like what I want to see is like you being like silly and goofy, and that like you have friends and you are reading, and you know, you are spending time with your family or whatever. Exactly.
That's just something that I just so badly wish I could tell them and explain to them in a way that they wouldn't get like defensive about it. I just want to shake them and be like, you have been lied to. Like this is not what women value. And I think that's such an important lesson about Faramir, because his failure is what makes him a more attractive man. It's the fact that his father sees him as lesser, and it's because he's not as good of a soldier, and he doesn't have this like bravado, this desire for glory and power. And that's what actually ends up making him a better person and a better partner for Éowyn. Like that's why he is what she needs and what she deserves.
Because in that
and I'm just like,
because she, you know, it's kind of like, you know, implied, hinted at that she wanted to be with Aragorn, but that is not what she needed, because going down this path of like glory and being a leader over, you know, a group of people is not healthy for her. And so
I always see such a good parallel between Éowyn and Faramir and Aragorn and the Hunger Games with Gale, Katniss, and Peeta, where it's like Katniss needed Peeta. Yeah. She needed the gentleness. She needed the softness. She did not need Gale's fire. And I feel like, I mean, not to say that Aragorn is that's like exactly
Gale, but what I said about Sam and Frodo.
Is it really?
What Frodo, when they're in Mordor, what Frodo he didn't need, you know, Boromir yelling at him to use the ring. He didn't need Gandalf instructing him. He didn't need Aragorn. What he needed in that moment was someone like Sam who was just going to save him, give him affection, and going to encourage him, and was going to carry him up the mountain. Oh my God. Okay, so I want to say that kind of brings the conversation full circle, but I think at this point this is going to end up being its own episode. So as much as I hate that I did one episode for women and now I'm going to do two for men.
It's just the fact that there's more of them.
Yeah, there's more of them. I think there's just like so much more density of content to discuss.
Yes, there's a little bit more complexity.
And that's just, I mean, I keep saying it, but it's like a testament to Tolkien and what he wrote, that, you know, we can spend an hour and a half talking about 3 characters. And there's still stuff, I feel like that.
And they're so complex. Oh yeah, there's probably still somebody is listening to this right now being like, about this? Why didn't you mention?
Yeah, I get like, whew, I feel like a catharsis. I feel a weight lifted off my shoulders, because these are like ideas and things that I have been wanting to go into detail about, like ever since I saw Two Towers and saw what Peter Jackson, the choices that he made, and I was like, no, you don't understand.
Yes, I do feel like, I'm not sure why, but people do tend to overlook Faramir, and I mean, which is like, you know, perfect. That's exactly what happens in his life.
Poor buddy.
everybody's like going for Sam and Aragorn as their favorite characters. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, Faramir literally goes through this trial by fire. He has all of these trials and tribulations, and he comes out the other side a kinder person, a wiser person. I think Tolkien says about him that he's modest, fair-minded, and scrupulously just, and very merciful. He has all of these just wonderful characteristics that are so heroic, but they aren't heroic in a glory and battle way.
And like that's what it comes back to, is that he is, I think, just like one of the best characters in the whole series, and he does not follow these traditional paths and like milestones of masculinity, and he's emerges on the other side better for it.
Yeah, gentle. His selflessness in this,
I'm gonna die alone, brutal,
horrible circumstances that he's put in by his family and just by being in this story. I don't know. He is the ultimate male role model.
He is the ultimate man. I'm gonna die alone because I have these false expectations of what men should be like. I should update that for my dating profile bio to be like, would you resist the One Ring? Would you pick up the One Ring if it lay on the highway, not if Minas Tirith were in ruin and you alone could save it?
Like, who is that's your like your opener. It's like, who is your male role model? And if they say anything other than
this is why and people
block.
Are like, I don't understand. I think that's really harsh, but this is why I say I think it's a red flag when people, especially guys, pick Boromir as their favorite character. Like, I think you can say, yeah, he's a really fascinating character. He's interesting. He has a very, obviously, we just talked about it for an hour and a half, very interesting story and dynamics, but there's just so many other characters you can choose that
there's actually
are better.
My mom is a big
people.
Oh yeah, something like my mom wrote me a letter on my wedding day, and she's a big Lord of the Rings fan, and she talked about how like I had to go through all of the Aragorns and the Boromirs of the world to find my Faramir. Like, you do find these other analogs to, I mean, not to say like Aragorn's a bad person, you should always aspire to be like Aragorn, but basically to say like, you know, all these people that were wrong for me until you found
your Faramir.
But, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
You know, like, anybody who you can compare to Faramir is an immediate
win. Immediate win. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Emily,
I'm so sorry. I was trying to be concise.
I feel like you were sitting in darkness now. The room you were in has gotten dark.
I lamp on from the beginning, but you know,
it is man, I mean, like, I guess I just extended this podcast by another week because I've added another episode, so that's fine. You know, ultimately it's fine. I don't think anyone will complain, but like, oh, that's just so funny, and I should have expected it from us, you know?
Yeah. I personally, I did. I was like, "There's no way we're just going to talk about
like,
Faramir."
30 minutes, and you're like, "Girl, that's cute."
In my head, I was like,
"Going to be 30 minutes."
I knew that we were going to talk at least an hour, maybe more. So no shocks, no surprises here. I don't have anything planned. My whole evening, I was like, Faramir.
Oh, that's great, and that's why I brought you on, for all of these reasons. What are you up to? Where can people find you on the internet? Oh, which probably hasn't changed in like the 3 weeks since you were last on.
I might possibly be streaming some Tears of the Kingdom when I get it, because I love that game, and I've made a couple of Breath of the Wild related videos over on my Instagram, which is Silmaremily. I've been more active there than TikTok as of late, but my TikTok is currently all Taylor Swift and Lord of the Rings related. So if you have ever seen a Taylor Swift Lord of the Rings mashup content
it's probably
on your
by
For You
you.
page, it is literally probably me. I think I am the niche, but I've got lots of people who are supporting, so that's exciting. So yeah, Legend of Zelda, Taylor Swift content, mixed up with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Come on over. It's Silmaremily literally everywhere on every
Amazing.
website.
Yeah, we're recording this, by the way, on Tears of the Kingdom Eve.
Literally,
so.
I've scrolled past like 5 people live streaming it because it's already out in Australia.
Yeah,
and
well,
New
and
Zealand.
I think
And
also
I'm like,
some people
no
got
spoilers!
like reviewers or something got, you know, early access to, and I was like,
Yeah.
I saw like a live on TikTok, and I was like,
Yes, I've seen a couple
I was
of
like,
them.
I'm
and
so
I keep scrolling
confused.
past
Wait a
them.
minute, that doesn't look familiar. I was like, that looks so.
Yeah.
Where is that? And then I was like, oh, they're playing, and I immediately scrolled past it. I was like, I don't want to know.
I know. I don't want. I mean, it's like I want to watch, but I also don't want to spoil it for myself. Like I want to
experience it. Yeah,
of playing. Yes, absolutely.
So I want a physical copy.
I have one. Yeah, I can't. The digital download. I have a really old Switch, and I was like, I don't trust my Switch's ability.
I don't want to risk ever running out of room. I don't want to risk like something crashing and me lose. So
yes, I am waiting on a physical copy in the mail, so I probably won't get it until a little bit later.
Well, here's how insane I am. So I also pre-ordered it. I've been like very rudely, GameStop sent me an email this morning that said, your order is on the way. And I went to check it, and it just said, like, your order is in progress.
That's what literally exactly what mine says.
And I was like, why would you send an email that says it's on the way?
That is exactly what mine says. I keep checking, and there's no tracking information.
Can we stop sending shipping confirmation emails when all they've done is created the label, you know?
Thank you. I hate it. I get so excited, and I go there, and it's like label created. But like GameStop has not given me any tracking information yet, so I
have nothing. So I don't think it's shipped yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Target tomorrow, and if and I'm gonna buy it there, and if it's sold out, that's fine. Like I have another copy coming. It's on the way.
But like when the other one comes, you'll just go and return it.
Yeah, but if it's not sold out, I'm going to buy it. I'll immediately have it. And then when the other copy arrives, I'll just go and return it.
I literally had not considered that. And I am 100% going to go do that tomorrow.
Yes. And what I'm even going to do,
I'm going to see it for like in-store pickup or something. I'm so mad that I didn't.
That's exactly, yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can, like, in the morning, if I can buy it online for in-store pickup. But because this is, like, I don't know, that it might not allow for in-store pickup because it's a popular item or something. So we'll see. But that's my plan, is that I'm going to wake up tomorrow not bright and early, because Target probably doesn't open till, like, 11 o'clock anyway. Yeah. I'm going to see if I can buy it online and have it ready to pick up. And if not, then I'll just go and run to the back of the store to the video game.
That's the move. I think I'm literally going to see if I can like cancel my order or something, because I was very much lamenting that I'm also going out of town next week. And I was like, I'm already not going to get to play it for a week, but I want to at least have it for like tomorrow.
Like, I want it. I want it
now.
Oh my gosh. That's What I'm Talking About's cover art is by Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at Vaishon Designs. If you want to get merch for That's What I'm Talking About, you can go to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod. You can follow the podcast on social media at talkingaboutpod, and you can follow me on Twitter and TikTok at MCWattsUp and on Instagram at MCTurndownForWhat. If you want to support the podcast, you can become a patron. Go to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod to explore the different levels of support that are available. Although I appreciate any level of support that you join, I will always give a special shout out to our sponsors, such as Taylor. Taylor, this podcast is made possible by wonderful people like you. Thank you. Okay, anyway, we need to wrap this up. We'll be here forever. We'll make our own Zelda podcast next.
I love that idea.
And, you know, much like when Denethor, when Boromir died and Denethor kills himself and Faramir also, like, brink of death, there was also multiple tiers of the kingdom there as well. That's my tie-in.
Oh my gosh, you just perfect tie-in.
Full circle.
Full circle moment.
Do you have any parting words for the audience?
If your favorite character isn't Faramir, you're wrong.
And that's what I'm talking about.